What if I told you that the secret to writing irresistible ads was already perfected over 50 years ago? The golden era of advertising wasn't just about flashy slogans. It was about crafting ad headlines so powerful, so persuasive, that they made people stop, read, and buy instantly. These weren't just words. They were psychological triggers that made sales explode. And today I'm going to break down exactly how you can write ads like the legendary ad men, David Ogilvy, Eugene Schwartz, Claude Hopkins, and write headlines that command attention even in today's digital world. So if you want to write better ads and you want to supercharge your results, then stick around for this video. I'm going to break down 5 actionable principles you can implement today and start maximizing your ad results. And all I ask, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like the video and subscribe to the channel as I post videos like this every single week. Let's get into the video. This is going to be one of the best trainings you've ever watched on how to write compelling advertising headlines and hooks. Again, you can implement this stuff in your advertising literally today. And what I've done over the last couple of weeks is I've gone back and analyzed some of the most famous and successful advertising books of all time, books by people like Claude Hopkins and Eugene Schwartz, and I've analyzed them and I've comprised them into this 10-minute training. And in today's video, we're going to talk about 3 concepts that every strong hook or advertising message or headline needs to have. And I'm also going to give you 5 practical strategies you can implement to write better headlines. Okay, I'm going to give you live examples. This is going to be a really in-depth training. So let's jump straight into the video. So the first thing we'll talk about quickly is just what is a headline. I think people get a little bit confused. A headline is the first thing that your user sees, reads, or hears, which hooks them into either seeing, reading, or hearing more information. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean it's your Facebook ad headline where it says headline, because that is not always, in most instances, that is not the first thing that they're going to read. Usually the first thing they see is whatever text is the largest. Okay, so that may be on your video in the first 3 seconds, that may be on your image ad itself, and we'll show you live examples of that in a moment. But the headline is what draws viewers in, it will capture their attention, and your primary goal of a headline is to essentially retain that person's time so they continue to read the rest of your advert. And Eugene Schwartz, who wrote the famous book on advertising, Breakthrough Advertising, he talks about the greatest mistake you can make in advertising is assuming that the reader is already interested, right? So the goal of the headline is to get the viewers to think, okay, this is interesting. Like, we pique their curiosity, and I'm going to continue to read or watch this advertorial or this advert. Okay, that is the goal of an ad headline or a hook. I like to prefer to call it a hook. So let's have a look at some of the old school advertising. You can kind of see headlines in action. So for example, we can see here the can bag, like immediately you're kind of like, what does this mean? So it kind of hooks you in, and we'll talk about why that happens in a moment. We've got 2-color process, offset coded. Again, this is just an example, right? That's obviously where your eyes are supposed to go to first. Space face, like what does that mean, right? Okay, it's kind of, you can see a theme here, like curiosity, but these are quite clearly in these ads. These are quite clearly the headlines. QT tans you in 3 to 5 hours without the sun or with it, right? Headline, again, quite obvious that that's the headline. And we'll talk about things such as subheadlines, which is something that might come after the headline, but you know for a fact what the headline is or what the hook is going to be. And then your kind of subheadline is what you want the user to read after that. It might satisfy something your headline kind of piques in curiosity. As you can see here, headline. So it's pretty obvious here what our headlines and where our headlines are. And I think one of the biggest mistakes people make, especially with Facebook advertising, is they're not clear on their hook or their headline and what they want the user to do. Like, what do they want them to read first, and how are you actually going to retain that user in terms of like continually viewing that piece of content or advert. So don't get confused. The headline doesn't need to be the headline section of your ad. Now, typically this would be considered the headline section of your ad. However, with these ads, it's quite clear. This is the headline, this is a call to action, this is the headline, and this is a call to action. I actually wish they would change this to call to action on Facebook. The reason they don't is because they they would assume this to be the call to action, and that's what they've put that as. But this, I would always assume, is more like a call to action than a headline. I typically prefer my headlines to be within my actual creatives themselves, because you've got a lot more control over text styling, text size, and color, and stuff like that. And just a hint, your headline or hook can also be the first 3 seconds of your video ad. It doesn't have to be an image. If you're running video ads, it's really important that your video has some sort of a strong hook or headline. And bit complicated, but it doesn't always have to be text-based, right? You can have a video that has a really compelling retention strategy, such as like you're showing a transformation or something, and it might just be the before video of that transformation, which holds viewers in and gets them to watch to see what the end result is going to be. So for example, things like time lapses can work really well. So the really key thing here is we're talking more about hooks. Every ad that you write has to have something, and it has to be purposeful, right? Intentional, some way of hooking that viewer into watching the rest of the ad. Okay, so let's move on. So why do headlines matter? Well, the headline is the most important part of any ad, landing page, or sales letter. Its only job is to get the user to read the next sentence. And according to Eugene Schwartz, we've already talked about this, the greatest mistake you can make in advertising is assuming that the reader is already interested. We can't assume that they're interested in our product and then just advertise that product. We need to hook that user in first. So just compare these two headlines for me and see which one you think is obviously more compelling. First one is new diet plan released. Second one is lose 10 pounds in 30 days without dieting. Now, this does a lot of things, which we're going to talk about later on in this video. Subconsciously, you might not think. There's also just tactics deployed with a headline like this. And this is, took me like 10 seconds to write this, right? There's zero thought into it, but like there is some tactics in there that we're going to talk about in this video. So we're going to talk briefly about the 3 functions of a great headline. Okay, and there's 3 functions of a great headline, and make sure you write this down. Number 1 is to capture attention. And that's to stop people in their tracks. That's pretty obvious, right? Number 2 is to qualify the right audience, which we can talk about a little bit later. And that's, you want your headline in as little text as possible. You want to capture attention. You want to qualify the audience. Usually we do that via some sort of pain that they're escaping from, or problem that they have in their life. And the last one is lead into the next sentence. So it has to be natural, flowing. And the goal is, if your headline was to, for example, if this video, if I just said to you at the start, oh, here are 5 ways in which you can, write compelling headlines, and gave them all to you in 30 seconds. Oh, and now I'm going to expand on them. Then you wouldn't watch the whole of this video. So it's the same concept with ads. We want to pique curiosity, and we want to drip feed that curiosity bit by bit through our full advertorial, whether that be through a full video ad, through our landing page, or through actual ad creatives, ad copy itself. And I've picked one example here, which we're actually going to go a little bit deeper and show the full advertorial later on in this video, because we're going to actually analyze some of the most successful ads of all time and what they did and why it worked. But the headline for this was, they laughed when I sat down at the piano, but when I started to play, ... right? Attention grabbing, drives curiosity, and it enforces the reader to continue reading the article or the advertorial, okay? So let's have a look at a couple of examples here. These are some, again, you guys may or may not have seen these ads in the past. These are old school sort of 60s, 70s adverts. This might even be older. This is a Rolls-Royce ad, and this famous headline is, at 60 miles an hour, the loudest noise in the new Rolls-Royce comes from the electric clock. Very compelling, very curious. You're kind of like, what the hell was the clock got to do with the car? Obviously, it's also kind of emphasizing the key USP of that product, like the positioning of that product, which is luxury. So it's kind of subconsciously positioning the Rolls-Royce as a luxury vehicle. People who care about having a comfortable drive, as opposed to a loud engine and loud noise and speed races, that kind of stuff, right? So doing a lot of things there. And the subheadline here, which you may or may not be able to read, which I'll read out, says, what makes Rolls-Royce the best car in the world? ? There's really no magic about it. It's merely patient attention to detail, says an eminent Rolls-Royce engineer. Okay, so we've added some trust and social proof in there as well, which is amazingly done. Does she or doesn't she? I love this one. I don't know what this means until I kind of read the subheadline. So what it does is it really gets you to read the subheadline, because you're kind of like, well, what the hell are they talking about, right? Like, what does this even mean? Hair color so natural, only her hairdresser knows for sure. Like, it's really, really perfectly written ad. People's faces, happy. You kind of get the idea. It's old school. Some of this stuff, most of this stuff still works. We just got to adapt it in a way that's kind of suitable for like more modern social media tactics, which we're going to talk about as well. 5 proven headline styles. So this is like, I'm going to give you guys, you can write this down, save this, and save the examples. And when you're writing your next ad headline, just keep these handy, because then you can kind of refer back to them and say, okay, am I including this? Am I including that? Is this curiosity? Is this fear-based? Is this authority? So we're going to go through these in depth and give you more examples, but just keep note of these. So 5 proven headlines. It's just like, it's kind of like for you guys, more of a tool that you can leverage when you're kind of writing ad headlines. So different headlines work for different market sophistication levels. If you guys have seen my content in the past, you've heard me talk about like the 5 levels of market sophistication, which is like taking a user from not knowing anything about the product to being ready to buy the product. Different headlines will work for different user bases. So for example, if you're retargeting existing website traffic, or you're sending email broadcasts, it's kind of like different headlines will suit those different audiences differently, right? The lower end stuff might be more benefit focused headlines, and the higher end stuff might be more pain driven headlines to kind of emphasize the challenges or pain points that user has and bring them into your funnel. So let's look at these 5 types of headlines. We've got direct benefit headlines. This is focused on what the reader gains from the product. So for example, erase wrinkles in just 5 minutes a day. And we're going to go through more examples of this in just a moment, don't worry. Number 2 is curiosity based headlines. This is make people wonder what's inside. For example, the one anti-aging secret doctors don't want you to know, ... Right, and this might be a top of funnel type of ad headline. Number 3 is fear-based headlines. This is using negative emotions to grab attention. So as opposed to the first one, which is kind of moving them towards a gain, this is moving them away from a pain point or fear that they already have. Is your roof slowly leaking? Here's how to tell ... Right, this is great, especially if you're running campaigns for products that are more search intent-based products. Can work really well. Authority-driven headlines. This is using credibility to persuade. So, for example, Harvard study reveals that the number 1 habit for weight loss. ... It's also, this is also curiosity. It's not like one size fits all. Right? This is also a curiosity-based headline as well. Right? It's using more than one principle. Number 5, story-based headlines. Engage with a narrative. So, for example, how a broke freelancer made 100K in 6 months without a website. I really like this. What you can also do is you can kind of leverage curiosity, authority, and story-based. So, for example, we take the roofing examples. It could be, you could use your headline could be a quote. It could be like, I was just weeks away from my roof collapsing. I'd have never known ... Like, for example, that's kind of story-based headlines. And it has a narrative, but it's also curiosity-driven because you're kind of like, well, what was the problem? Maybe I had that problem. And it's also authority-driven because you're using credibility from an actual customer you've helped. So you kind of get the idea. And it's kind of like, more fear-based, right? So let's go to headline type 1, which is direct benefit headlines. This is where we tell the reader exactly what they get, essentially. It's as direct as they come. So it clearly states the number 1 benefit of the product or service. And obviously what you can do is you can A/B and split test these. If your product has like maybe 2 or 3 core benefits, we can actually split test these out, and we can test maybe 2 or 3 different headlines and see which one works the best. So, for example, erases, like we just talked about, erase wrinkles in just 5 minutes a day. Second example, double your leads in 30 days without spending a penny on advertising. And third example, get a whiter smile in just 1 dentist visit. And that, your headline can also handle by far the largest objection. It can talk about the biggest positive, but you can also handle the biggest objection in your headline. And what I've seen work really well, your headline handles the benefit, and then your call to action button can handle the actual objection handle. So for example, this double your leads in 30 days could be your headline, and then your call to action could be start today with 0 advertising spend. For example, right? That could be a call to action. So you kind of get the idea. That's the first one. Note that down. Second one we've got here is curiosity-based headlines. So the only objective with this headline is to get them to read more of the article, watch more of the video, whatever it might be. Think about TikTok Reels, Instagram Reels, YouTube videos. People hook you in the first sort of 3 to 5 seconds. Think the same thing with your ad copy. How can you do that with your ads? How can you hook viewers in really quickly and get them to watch the entire clip and get them to read the entire ad? That kind of stuff. So key points here: use mystery, surprise statement to make the reader want to know more. And if you can leverage some sort of pain in there as well, that's obviously more than ideal. So for example, the one anti-aging secret doctors don't want you to know ... Now obviously for me it wouldn't necessarily work, but again, we're qualifying with our headline too, right? This is more targeted towards seniors or women, in their kind of 40s or 50s. Second headline: what happens when you drink this every morning? This is great because it's really you don't know anything, right? And you kind of want to find out more. Third one: she stopped doing this one thing and lost 25 pounds instantly. Now, anybody who's struggling with weight loss, this is a perfect headline, okay? So curiosity-based headlines work extremely, extremely well. Number 3 is fear-based headlines. So that's to tap into a negative emotion and create some sort of urgency, right? And this is why you really got to understand your customer ICP or customer profile to understand what pains they're having, what problems they're facing, this kind of stuff. So for example, is your roof slowly leaking? Here's how to tell ... 5 hidden signs you might have diabetes. It's quite intense, but you get the idea. Most homeowners make this costly mistake. Are you one of them? Like that's great. That could work with so many different products, and you can kind of customize that depending on the product. And I said before, this works extremely well for more natural search-based products when we're running meta ads. We're talking about things like roofing, HVAC, home service products, or we might be talking about pest control products or things like this, which are more search-based products. Okay, it works really, really well. We're trying to sell somebody on something based on a fear they already have, and we kind of position our product as the natural solution to that problem that they have or that fear that they have, okay? Number 4 is authority-driven headlines. So we talked about it before. This is using credibility to persuade the viewer. So, for example, Harvard study reveals #1 habit for weight loss, ... Just on that, you don't have to necessarily use your own sources. If there's articles out there that, or, you know, that justify your product or make your product, position your product as a good product, not necessarily yours, but the product that you're selling, okay, then you can leverage those articles. You can leverage those hooks and things like this. You've got to get creative with that. Why 9 out of 10 dentists recommend this toothpaste? I think it's Colgate. We've all heard that one, right? FBI negotiator shares the secret to closing more sales. Great headline. I love that. Number 5 is story-based headlines. So we've talked about this a little bit before. Let's go through some examples. How a broke freelancer made 100K in 6 months without a website. I used to struggle with anxiety until I discovered this simple trick. Very old school stuff, still works. From $50,000 in debt, 7-figure business, my journey. You kind of get the idea. And the stuff we talked about earlier, I like to leverage things such as copywriting. In my copy, I like to leverage like testimonials and reviews and go through reviews and have a look at some of them, see if you can pull out little segments that kind of fit into these categories. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave underneath this video a link to a template which has all of these broken down, and you can then take those and you can write your own ads into those as well. But let's move on with the video. So number 1 is example. I'm going to walk through some examples. So number 1 is US School of Music. This is a 1920s ad, and the headline is, "They laughed when I sat down at the piano, but when I started to play, ... whatever you want." The reason it works, very curiosity driven. Okay, the reader wants to know what happens next. It's also kind of, it doesn't look like an advert, right? It looks just like an article, right? And there's also a kind of FOMO. It's like, you know, people want to impress people, so it talks about essentially learning how to play an instrument. And they're setting up, you know, I think they're selling a course, on a music course, that kind of thing. Also, proof testimonials. It provides evidence of success through real student experiences. So this is how the old school ad guys did it, right? They'd have one compelling headline, then have big blocks of text, because they didn't have necessarily like, you know, video ads or radio ads and lots of websites where they could necessarily like, you know, sell this stuff. So they had to put a lot of information into their advertorials. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got, and I got it from a book actually, was that you should try and make your ads good enough where they can actually sell the user themselves, as opposed to needing a salesperson. If you're able to make your ads and content good enough to actively sell that person, then by the time it gets to the person who's picking up the phone, they're all ready to buy, right? And at least it increases the chances of them buying. So really, really cool one. Let's move on to the second. So example number 2 is a guy called Sherwin Cody. It's a language course. It's again 1920s. And I love this headline. Do you make these mistakes in English? Fear-based headlines. So fear and curiosity hook. Use the question headline to make the reader insecure. They might be making embarrassing mistakes. Okay. This is, I think, selling a English book on English or a course on English. And it targets as an existing insecurity, fear of poor grammar, ruining professional success, kind of, you know, focusing on a pain point people have. And the conversational tone feels more like a helpful guide than a sales pitch. And feel free to pause these. Read these advertorials if you can zoom in. It's quite small, but if you can zoom in and read them, feel free to do so. Also engagement driven. The ad suggests self-assessment, making the reader interact. Okay, let's go to example number 3, which again, I like it. I haven't changed the text. For some reason it's the same. So we're just going to analyze this one, which I really like this one. So this is Owens Corning. It's like a fiberglass insulation. So they've gone with the core problem or angle they've gone with is fuel bills, so like energy saving element to it. So you can see if your fuel bills make you see red, think pink. The insulation is obviously pink, which is just funny. It's just fun, and they've used a lot of color in this. Right, it's very eye catching. Which again, I will talk about that in a different module. But the color of this is red. It's bright. You're like, whoa, what the hell's going on? Very, very cool. Very, very good. I like this a lot. And that's the third example. So let's move on. So that is the end of this video. Now, what I want you to do is I'm going to leave a link down below to the kind of worksheet in Canva, where I've got the headline types and principles, styles, and I've got some examples, and then I've got a column where you can add your own examples in there, right? And you can take this, play around with it, and next time you're writing your ad, you can have a think about how can we actually leverage some of these old school principles in our advertising to make things work and make things pop. And if you enjoyed this, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.